in deep, deep doo-doo. And they've been telling us, the leading experts, for over 40 years. This is what we're come to. The next stage after this is there going to be pipelines blown up if our leaders don't pay attention to what's going on.
The next stage after this is there going to be pipelines blown up.
Now, Mr. Speaker, I am fortunate that I have an opportunity now to speak to the despicable remarks of David Suzuki. However, Mr. Speaker, my view is that every member of this House should have that opportunity to speak to this and to consider a motion to condemn David Suzuki's disgusting remarks. And I will, as Government House Leader, later today, move such a motion in this chamber. It's important to note that David Suzuki doesn't just hate pipelines that want to carry the most ethically produced oil for export around the world. The truth is, David Suzuki hates Alberta.
Adam Soos here for Rebel News, and I am joined by a very special guest, member of Legislative Assembly and Minister of Environment and Parks for Alberta, Jason Nixon. This morning we were watching the proceedings in legislature and we were talking about on our live stream the troubling remarks from David Suzuki, remarks that if anyone on the conservative side would say anything comparable to, there'd undoubtedly be investigations, allegations of threats, virtual silence across the board from pundits, the CBC barely covering this.
This is what we're come to. The next stage after this is there going to be pipelines blown up if our leaders don't pay attention to what's going on.
The next stage after this is there going to be pipelines blown up.
We were so grateful to have you take a strong position on this and speak to this.
Our pipelines, Mr. Speaker, are the safest and most efficient way to export ethical Alberta oil all across the continent. David Suzuki is so out of touch with the real world that he advocates, Mr. Speaker, for eco-terrorism towards Canadian people and industries. This is completely unacceptable and extremely reckless. The NDP, Mr. Speaker, sadly have a long history of collaborating with David Suzuki, and their silence on his outrageous comments made them complicit with calls for eco-terrorism towards Albertans and Canadians. Alberta's oil and gas industry, along with Alberta's government, have developed innovative technologies that actually impact the environment. The destruction of our pipelines is eco-terrorism and must be rebuked by everyone in this country.
Can you maybe go through some of your comments today in legislature here in Alberta?
Yeah, well, I think all Canadians and all Albertans should be appalled by any comments that could be used to incite violence in any way referring to the blowing up of a pipeline or any type of infrastructure. Is absolutely appalling. And so I wanted to make a clear statement as the Minister of Environment, one, to stand up for our incredible environmental record inside our province and the incredible hard work of the men and women who work in our energy industry. And we did that today. But on top of that, we called on immediately for David Suzuki to apologize for what he said and to stop any comments that in any way could be used to support eco-terrorism. And it's just completely unacceptable. I also had some concerns with the fact that we saw the official opposition in Alberta, the NDP opposition in Alberta this weekend pass motions supporting the illegal blockades of important pipeline projects in BC. At this day and age, it is completely and utterly unacceptable for anybody in public life to call for people to be illegally blocking projects or to in any way be condoning acts of violence or saying that acts of violence would take place when it comes to this infrastructure. So we made that clear in the legislature today in my statement.
However, Mr. Speaker, my view is that every member of this House should have that opportunity to speak to this and to consider a motion to condemn David Suzuki's disgusting remarks. And I will, as Government House Leader, later today, move such a motion in this chamber. It's important to note that David Suzuki doesn't just hate pipelines that want to carry the most ethically produced oil for export around the world. The truth is, David Suzuki hates Alberta. David Suzuki has compared Alberta's oil and gas industry to slavery in the past, which is despicable on its own. But now he has said the following to Check News in Vancouver this past Saturday. Suzuki says, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, "There are going to be pipelines blowing up," and goes on to say, "I saw the power of civil disobedience." And then he says, people in Extinction Rebellion are saying we're headed in the direction of extinction and we're rebelling against it. That's why I'm here.
And just a few moments ago, I moved a motion in the legislature, which will hopefully be debated tomorrow, and I hope passed, making a clear statement that the Alberta legislature stands against this. And this will be an opportunity for the official opposition to condemn some of the remarks that's coming from their own party.
And this should be a nonpartisan issue. People are entitled to peaceful protest. People are entitled to strong words, but people are not entitled to advocate or threaten violence or terrorism, ultimately eco-terrorism, based on ideologies. Maybe if you could just speak to the fact that as environment minister and as parks minister, how environmentally clean and ethical our oil is, and how it helps keep Alberta this clean and beautiful place, despite all these calls for climate emergencies and all this stuff. If you could just speak to that and how off base David Suzuki is.
Well, David Suzuki is way off base. Alberta, of course, is the third largest producer of oil and gas products anywhere in the world. Certainly when it comes to environmental and social governance, we are amongst the best in the world. It goes without saying, I should say, on the social side, that the Alberta jurisdiction, the Canadian jurisdiction, is amongst the best in the world when it comes to human rights. And the fact that these type of organizations continue to advocate against Alberta and Canadian oil and would rather go to places like Saudi Arabia and Russia to be able to buy the product in and of itself is appalling. But they're also wrong when it comes to our environmental record. Alberta was the first jurisdiction to take emission management seriously way back when Ralph Klein sat in my seat as Minister of the Environment. And we have worked tirelessly with our industry to continue to make our products as clean as possible when it comes to emission management. Over the last several years, we've announced hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects that help us meet our environmental record, but most importantly, also keep our energy industry working and keep people going, thousands of people being able to go to work on these new type of projects in our province. So we know we produce water for much of North America. We have some of the most beautiful landscapes in the world that people come to visit each and every year. And we have the expertise on how to produce our oil and gas and still keep those areas as beautiful as you see each and every day. So it's just ridiculous to hear David Suzuki and others continue to disparage what is our greatest industry and the largest employer of people in our country and the largest producer of GDP inside the country of Canada, never mind just Alberta.
So this will be debated in short order. How can Albertans, regardless of political lines, ensure that MLAs are considering this motion carefully and that they make the right decision in calling for David Suzuki to formally apologize and to retract ultimately these divisive and aggressive statements?
Well, we're going to call the motion, I hope, as early as tomorrow. I'm just working through the process of that. It's kind of a last minute thing as we started to understand what Mr. Suzuki had said, and importantly, what the NDP had said this weekend through their policy process. Mm-hmm. And Albertans can participate in that process by, as always, email your MLA. I can tell you we take that seriously. I am an MLA. When I'm hearing things from my office, it helps me to be able to advocate inside that building, inside this chamber for the people that I work for. And I think it's very important, particularly if you have an NDP MLA, to be able to send them a message that says this type of stuff is just unacceptable, full stop. This is not a partisan issue. It is my hope that the entire chamber unanimously will condemn this type of language and make clear that we expect the rule of law to be followed inside our province and inside our country. I want to make clear, as you said, we support the right to protest, but there are rules in place that protect infrastructure and protect people. And law enforcement has an important job to do as far as enforcing the rules, and anything that would imply anything along the line of blowing something up is just absolutely unacceptable and something that should never leave anybody in public life's mouth.
Yeah, even if you are an eco activist, a NDP voter, this is a look that just makes you look bad as well. This is something that we have to unilaterally speak against. It'd be categorically unacceptable to speak this way for or against the pipelines. It has no place in public discourse. David Suzuki, as we well know, has made a career off generating scandals like this. He's been depicted as a saint often by CBC and other outlets in the media, but his history speaks for itself. We actually have a book written by our very own Sheila Gunn-Reid, goes into some of the details. Maybe you can get it tonight if you order it quick. Get some information on David Suzuki. We're going to follow this. We're going to keep people posted. Hopefully this motion is successful. Hopefully David Suzuki does the right thing and apologizes. Minister Nixon, I want to thank you so much for hopping right out of legislature, speaking with us, and giving this important update. We're going to get it out to the people right away. Thank you so much. Any final words before we part?
Well, no, thank you for your time, Adam. It's a pleasure to be on here. And again, I just would like to close with this. This is about standing up for the hardworking men and women of our province who work in the energy industry and the industries that depend on the energy industry. We're proud of them, and we will continue as a government And I hope all parties inside our province will continue to stand up for that industry, because it's what built our province. And we will never, ever accept any language that implies that some sort of violence should take place when it comes to that industry or any industry.
Thanks so much, Minister Nixon. And as always, to all our viewers, thank you so much for tuning in for Rebel News. I'm Adam Soos.
Did you know that I wrote a book about David Suzuki way back in 2018? It's called The Case Against David Suzuki. The mainstream media loves him. He's a darling of the CBC. He's a creation of the CBC. But he has a history of eco-radicalism and bad behavior that has been upfront for years. Now, if you'd like to get a copy of that book and learn the things about David Suzuki that the mainstream media doesn't want you to know, might I suggest you head on over to this special website, suzukibook.com.